I once saw a girl sit down on the floor in one of the cubicles and show everyone her clit ring. What's the most NSFW thing you've experienced in a professional situation? Hey, it's you again. Thanks for coming back to another storytime. I'm Andrew, your narrator. You're going to love this one. While you're here, why not like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell button so you don't miss any more NSFW storytimes with me. If you don't, I'll show everyone in your family your internet history. Let's get into the stories. I worked at a restaurant and one of the hostesses would talk about having anal beads in while working and how she came when she walked around the restaurant. Walked in on two people having sex in the break room. They claimed they hated each other and they ended up together. I was getting a physical for school and had to take my gown off for the hernia part. That same moment the doctor's phone rang and he answered it. Meanwhile I'm standing there butt naked while he talks on the phone for 10 minutes. Owner's son at a computer repair shop would use the test bench to look up stupid crap. He got the test bench infected with viruses while looking at cat porn. No people. Just cats. Having sex. At least he was laughing uncontrollably at it instead of furiously masturbating to it. First startup I worked at in the 90s, just a few of us ran meetings by having the note taker use a sheet of paper placed over a Playboy. If the note taker started flipping through the magazine, the meeting wasn't interesting enough and was declared over. I work at the hospital. Walked in on a mom and dad snorting mom's pain pills off the medical cart. Go figure, their child was also born addicted to methadone. Immediate reporting done. There was a guy and a girl, not in a relationship, that used to regularly go into the sick bay around lunchtime for 10 to 20 mins. She was a bit loud. Everyone nearby knew when they were in session. In Brazil, we have this WhatsApp joke where they put some random video with the audio of Alexis Texas moaning very loud. Once I was in a kinda serious meeting and my boss got caught in one of those jokes. Needless to say that everyone laughed and took a 5-minute break before resuming the meeting. I was on call at the hospital one night during my residency. I get called at about 3 a.m. for a disturbance in a patient's room. I walk down the hall and hear some screaming and a bunch of nurses standing outside this patient's room. As I get to the door I see the patient standing in the corner, covered in her own poop, legs bent and arm up her gown. This woman was pulling out poop from her butt and throwing it at nurses and whoever tried to get near her. I noped the hell out of there. She eventually ran out of poop and I have a phone order for some meds to put her down. I felt bad for the housekeeping crew that night. They were up to their elbows in poop. I worked with a woman who claimed she could give herself an orgasm using only her mind. On 2 occasions, I saw her demonstrate this. Of course, she could have been lying, but that is a weird thing to lie about. She claimed that the more people were watching, the easier it was for her. She seemed pretty convincing. Edit. This was not at all similar to the exaggerated fake orgasm scene from When Harry Met Sally. It was more subdued and, apart from some minor soft moaning, silent. It seemed believable based on my somewhat limited, but nonetheless existent, experience with the subject. Edit 2. I am aware that women can lie about orgasms. My second sentence refers to the fact that it would be weird to volunteer this information, out of the blue, as a lie. Whether or not the orgasms were real or not is immaterial. Her sexual exhibitionism in a professional work environment is the crux of this story. I worked in a photo lab at a major right out of high school. This was just a couple of years before digital cameras killed film, so I still dealt with people bringing in disposables and rolls of film to develop. 95% of the stuff I saw was kids' birthday parties and vacation shots. The rest, though, was some NSFW stuff. One woman in her mid-40s that apparently liked to party with her friends had a thing about resting her boobs on people's head, nice boobs BTW. Another guy dropped off a disposable camera for 1-hour development. I ran it through, and the entire roll was a woman who was drop-dead gorgeous just posing naked on the bed. Well, when he returned to pick up the pictures she was with him. That was a very awkward moment of ringing them up, and she couldn't look me in the eye. Had another guy drop off a camera who was a real class act. Naked photos of his GF wife, a collection of guns, and him snorting coke off a family picture. One other story I have is about a couple that brought in a roll of film. I ran it through the process and most of the images were innocuous, but the final few were probably a little saucy. I say probably because the images were so dark I couldn't make out much more than a silhouette. It was likely the wife modeling awesome lingerie. I never printed the pictures, though, since they were almost all black. They picked them up and returned a short time later with my manager and store director in tow, demanding I be fired for stealing those last few shots. My explanation didn't satisfy them, so I was forced to put their film back in the machine and show exactly how the shots were and why they weren't printed. After that they got real sheepish and muttered an apology before quickly leaving. That peek into people's lives dried up when digital went mainstream though. I was 14 and on my first summer job ever. A well-dressed middle-aged businessman comes in, and we have completely normal quick chat. I can't remember anymore, other than he said that he had seen me working on the window a few times. Then he takes a thing out of his pocket and reaches out his hand. Without thinking, I stick out my hand and take it, which turns out to be a dirty tissue. In a very kind voice he says, "I want you to know that I jerked on that thinking about you." Flashes a nice smile and without any rush leaves. Even said hi to my boss on his way out. Took me a while to understand it really happened and start acting, just enough for him to leave. He knew it and did it on purpose. I spent the rest of the day mostly crying in the bathroom. It was the contrast on what I was used to on that job. I had the best time and people were wonderful, and completely having my guard down that threw me off. Edit. Since there are so many same questions I'm answering here. I never went to the police. Back then I only told my closest friends. I think that's the reason why I felt so angry about this for quite a while. I wasn't necessarily traumatized, but I definitely had these pangs of anger when I thought about the situation on a shower or lying on the bed. I would have everything I could possibly need to go to the police. We had cameras, I had the tissue, I had the greatest boss whom I knew would have immediately believed me and acted right then when it happened or even later. She was a kick-ass though lady, and I know that if I had immediately opened my mouth and yelled to her what happened, she would have slammed the door and not let him leave. I didn't go to the police, firstly because I felt deeply ashamed of what happened. Just saying out the words he told me was way too much. I didn't even tell my sisters until years later because I knew they would tell my parents, and I told them everything. The first person I told exactly what happened with details was my then boyfriend 2 years after it happened, and he was the first person who even mentioned police. The second reason I never told anyone, let alone the police, is that it wasn't anything completely revolutionary to me. Yes, it was deeply shocking to someone who had only kissed guys and was pretty much unaware that people around me even masturbate, but I had been sexually harassed and humiliated before that incident so many times that I always thought you just deal with it and move on. And I don't mean hormonal teenage boys. I'm not saying guys your age aren't capable of doing horrible and traumatic stuff too, but grown men. Grown men had offered me money for sex, taken pictures of me, called me names, stared at me. I've been groped, touched, complimented, and shown penis I didn't want to see. And I'm not talking about only being a teenager. I remember men starting to notice me when I was as young as 8 to 9. It definitely got worse after I developed hips and ass as a preteen, but even before I had the shape of a woman, and even still then I was stick thin and looked young, just like I still do. Everyone I know had been harassed. I promise you, every single living female has at least one story like this. After this incident I've been harassed, like my second boss on my second job accidentally smacked my ass when I was 15, to give one example, or something that can't be counted as sexual harassing, but approaching so many times while working that I can't start listing those incidents. Working on customer service as a female does that. I still get that treatment, but I know exactly how to deal with creeps nowadays. It took me a long time to realize that I have the right to be other things than nice and polite to strangers, especially at work. And you can do it by not being vulgar or physically offensive, but make your message loud and clear. Fun tip that works surprisingly often after someone shoots you with a greasy, disgusting comment. Just intensely staring at him with a deadpan face, not saying one word or acknowledging his action, But just staring the crap out him is ridiculously effective. Complete your job while not moving an inch. If he tiniest bit normal, he will get uncomfortable as duck and even start apologizing. People, don't be afraid to call the security, tell your boss, and even go to the police. Let's make a world a better place, people. Maybe one day young children, girls and women won't have to go through all this.
Like and subscribe for more funny, interesting, and scary r/ask Reddit videos.